He opened the door with the certainty of a man announcing a decree. "You're giving that flat to your sister," he said. No greeting, no question, only command. He planted himself in the hallway with his arms crossed, voice even and practiced, the way someone who expects obedience speaks. I didn't offer him a chair. I just kept stirring my coffee until he finished. "She's getting married," he added. "She needs somewhere to live." "You don't," I said. "You always had more than enough." There was the smug righteousness he wrapped around every demand. This wasn't about discussion. It was about capitulation. He scolded me like a child. "Don't be difficult, Emma. Be grateful. It's only an apartment." Only an apartment. The home I'd bought after years of second jobs and thrift, the first thing that felt truly mine. "I'm not giving it to her," I said, low and steady. His face closed like a door. "You're being selfish," he shot back. "She's been there for me. You haven't." The neat hypocrisy of it nearly made me laugh. Then he landed his usual blow. "If you can't do something this small for family, I'll have to rethink what you deserve when I'm gone." He meant the will. He always meant the will. But this time, I didn't plead or panic. I reached for the thin folder on the table and slid it across to him. "You might want to read this before you decide who deserves what." My father hadn't always been like that. Before my mother died, he was softer, clumsy with love, leaving sticky notes on the fridge, humming off-key while he cooked. After she was gone, grief calcified into control. Affection turned into a ledger, measured out according to favors and loyalty. He had always had a favorite, Lily. In his eyes, she could do no wrong. When she failed, it was fate. When I succeeded, it was vanity. I used to envy her effortless charm, the way she could turn a small falsehood into something palatable. But envy evaporates when you see how the illusion is made. The pattern began with little things. My mother's jewelry missing, bills appearing under my name I'd never signed for. One evening my father asked, offhand, whether I had withdrawn money from his business account. That question changed how I looked at everything. I started paying attention. I followed the faint, ugly trail that arrogance leaves. Transfers, withdrawals, accounts held under borrowed names. Lily's name kept surfacing where it didn't belong, buried in the logs, tied to forged authorizations, drifting to the company's books like a shadow. I didn't confront her straight away. I gathered proof quietly, methodically. Bank statements, email timestamps, photocopies of letters signed with my father's hand but written in hers. I traced transactions in the company to accounts that weren't hers, then to ones that were small, clumsy attempts to hide what she'd been siphoning for months. She had talent, the kind that makes trouble look like brilliance. She also had an arrogance that leaves fingerprints. On the night I made my decision, I sat alone at the kitchen table with the city's lights leaking in through the window and the papers spread out before me. Revenge, I realized, didn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes a quiet, precise exposure of truth is enough. When the flat's paperwork was completed, I kept my name on the deed. I knew my father would react, that his sense of ownership would bristle at my independence. And when he stormed in, voice ready with orders, I was prepared. He flipped through the documents in the folder with a growing, painful confusion. He read the transfers, the forged authorizations, the audit trails connecting Lily to the account she'd emptied. "This is a lie," he said. "Someone set her up." "No," I told him very softly. "She set you up." He blinked, thumb tracing a line on a page as if that could erase the evidence. When I asked him if he noticed the company funds dwindling, if he realized where they had gone, he sank into a chair and the fight left him. "I don't believe it," he whispered. "You don't have to," I said. "The investigators will." I let that hang between us. He looked at me then with an expression I'd never seen, part hurt, part astonishment, like someone who'd been stripped of a comforting story he'd told himself for years. By the time Lily realized the net was closing, it was already too late. Her calls were frantic, full of pleading and promises. I didn't pick up. There was nothing for me to fix. I had only made visible the structure she'd built out of lies. My father tried to shield her at first, to soothe the scandal away, denials, excuses, the desperate smoothing of sharp edges. But the board had seen the documents. Once admiration turned to suspicion, it hardened into action. Suddenly, the meetings were about audits, not anniversaries. The smiles evaporated. When I saw my father again, it was different. He was quieter, reduced somehow by the knowledge he'd been so ready to ignore. He didn't offer an apology. Pride isn't that graceful. But his eyes had lost the certainty they used to have. There was shame there and a small, late understanding. Now the flat is mine, paid for, quiet. I often sit by the window with a cup of coffee and watch the city move. Other people's lives in motion, unmoved by family scandals. I think of the last thing he said before I showed him the truth. She deserves it more than you. He was right in a terrible, literal way. She deserved the reckoning that came from her own deeds. My aim wasn't to hurt for the sake of hurting. I wanted honesty returned to the ledger. In the end, I gave them back what they had earned, the truth. And sometimes, I've learned, the truest gifts are the hardest to receive.